You arrive gently. There is no door to open, no sound announcing you. You simply find yourself here, standing in a wide, dim room that has never been called a room before. The air is warm and heavy in a comforting way, like the quiet just before sleep. Beneath your feet, the ground feels smooth and faintly warm, as if it remembers heat even when the source is gone. You breathe in slowly. The breath comes easily. Nothing asks you to hurry. This place exists before words, before labels, before anything knows its own name. It feels like a library before books, before shelves, before the idea that something might be saved for later. The space is open and calm, illuminated by a soft, diffuse glow that has no visible source. It is not bright. It is kind. You notice the silence first. Not an empty silence, but a living one. A silence filled with a low, distant hum, like a planet breathing to itself. The sound is steady and reassuring, the way a refrigerator hums in another room while you fall asleep. It tells you that something is happening, even if you do not need to watch it. This is the early Earth. Not dramatic. Not violent. Just present. Around you, the air carries drifting shapes. Molecules move slowly, lazily, like dust motes floating through a beam of afternoon light. They bump, they separate, they wander again. No intention guides them. No plan waits at the end. And yet, there is a softness to their motion, a suggestion that repetition might be possible. You let your shoulders relax. You let the thoughts settle. Life has not begun yet. Not really. But the conditions for memory are quietly assembling. This is the part of the story that often gets skipped. Not the survival, not the struggle, but the waiting. The long, gentle pause where nothing knows what it is for. You glance around the vast room. The shelves are empty. Completely empty. They line the walls in your imagination, tall and unmarked, made not of wood but of potential. They are not shelves yet, only the idea of places where something could rest. Nothing sits on them. Nothing has learned how to stay long enough to be placed down. Chemistry drifts. That is all it does. Molecules meet, separate, meet again. Some combinations last a moment longer than others. Most fade quickly, dissolving back into the warm background. There is no disappointment in this. No failure. It is simply the way motion explores itself. You breathe out slowly. The room exhales with you. Here, the universe is practicing. Practicing how to repeat. Practicing how to hold a shape for more than a blink. These shapes are not alive, not yet, but they are curious in the most basic way. They exist, and then they exist again. This is important. Even if it feels small. Information, at its beginning, is not about meaning. It is about persistence. About whether something can happen again in roughly the same way. The earliest forms of information do not know they are information. They are habits. Gentle habits of matter. You watch as a small pattern forms nearby. A loose arrangement of molecules drifts together, lingers, then breaks apart. Moments later, a similar arrangement appears again, not identical, but familiar. Like hearing the same melody hummed by different people in different rooms. The library listens. The shelves remain empty, but attentive. You might smile here, just slightly. The universe is trying things out, the way you might rearrange pillows before sleep, never quite satisfied, always adjusting. There is no rush to get it right. There is no right yet. Time stretches wide and soft. It does not push. It allows. The warmth around you feels steady, comforting. The ground beneath your feet holds its temperature like a promise. This warmth matters. It gives molecules enough energy to move, but not so much that they tear away too quickly. It is a perfect middle, though no one calls it that. You take another slow breath. In. Out. The idea of memory has not arrived, but the need for it is beginning to form. Not consciously. Not deliberately. Just as a quiet tendency. Some patterns, by chance, stick around longer. They repeat more often. And repetition, even without awareness, is the first hint of remembering. The shelves seem to lean forward, just a little. Waiting. You notice that nothing here is wasted. Every drift, every collision, every brief structure teaches the room something about what is possible. The library is learning how to be a library, even while remaining empty. There is a gentle humor in this, if you allow it. Matter fumbling politely in the dark, trying to remember what it just did. Forgetting immediately. Trying again. It is endearing, in a cosmic sort of way. You feel safe here. You are not required to understand everything. You are allowed to simply stand and breathe. This chapter of the story is often told too quickly. But here, there is time to linger. To notice the quiet courage it takes for the universe to repeat itself at all. To attempt consistency in a place where change is the only rule. You sense that the room is preparing for something, though nothing announces it. The shelves do not fill yet. The air does not sharpen. But the drifting patterns grow slightly more familiar, slightly more frequent. Habits are forming. Softly. Patiently. You let your breath match the rhythm of the room. Slow. Even. Calm. The low hum continues, steady as ever. It does not care whether you listen, but it welcomes you when you do. Here, before words, before code, before life, the most important question is not how to survive. It is how to last. How to remain long enough to be noticed again. You feel that question settle into the space around you, not heavy, not urgent. Just present. Like a book that has not been written yet, but already knows it wants to be remembered. As you breathe out, slowly and fully, the empty shelves seem a little less empty. Not filled. Just ready. And somewhere in the warm drifting air, the first faint marks begin to imagine themselves, barely there, waiting for the next quiet chapter to begin. You remain inside the same vast library. Nothing has moved suddenly. Nothing has changed sharply. The warmth still rests against your skin, and the low hum of the planet continues, steady and patient. The shelves are still empty, but now they feel less silent, as if they have learned how to listen. You take a slow breath in. The air drifts back out. Around you, the molecules continue their gentle wandering. They float, turn, touch, and separate again, like people passing in a hallway without ever stopping to speak. But now, something subtle is different. Some meetings happen again. Not often. Not predictably. Just enough to be noticed. You tilt your awareness toward the movement. You are not watching events. You are listening for patterns. A faint rhythm emerges, barely there. A sequence repeats itself, then disappears, then returns in a slightly altered way. It feels like a whisper echoing across the tall, empty space of the library. Not a message. Not a word. Just a sound that remembers having been made before. This is where habits begin. Not intentions. Habits. Chemistry, left alone long enough, tends to fall into routines. When certain molecules meet, they sometimes encourage the same meeting to happen again. No awareness guides this. No decision is made. It is simply easier for familiar paths to be walked twice. You breathe out slowly. The room seems to breathe with you. The whispers grow a little more frequent. A loose pattern forms, dissolves, then forms again nearby. Each repetition is imperfect, like a story retold from memory, but the shape remains recognizable. This is important, even if it feels almost invisible. Repetition is the gentlest form of memory. It does not know the past. It merely resembles it. You notice how the library responds. The empty shelves do nothing dramatic, yet their presence matters. Space itself begins to hold echoes. When a pattern appears once, the room becomes slightly more ready for it to appear again. There is a quiet kindness in this process. Nothing is forced to last. Nothing is punished for fading. Some molecular arrangements fall apart quickly, their whispers too faint to return. Others linger just long enough to be echoed. These are not better or worse. They are simply more persistent, like a tune that sticks without asking permission. You might feel a small smile here. Matter is learning to hum to itself. Forgetting, remembering, forgetting again. The universe practices, patiently, without embarrassment. You shift your weight slightly on the warm stone floor. The ground holds steady. This is not yet life. There is no boundary, no inside or outside. There is only movement and repetition, like footsteps crossing the same path through tall grass. Each pass makes the trail a little easier to follow next time. You inhale. Patterns form. You exhale. They repeat. In this rhythm, information begins to exist, though no one calls it that. Information, at this stage, is simply the tendency for something to happen again. It is not stored anywhere permanent. It lives briefly in motion itself. The whispers travel through the library halls. They bounce softly from wall to wall, never loud, never demanding attention. If you were not listening closely, you might miss them entirely. You listen anyway. You have nowhere else to be. Some patterns fade after a few repetitions. Others return more reliably, as if the molecules involved have learned a small preference. It is not memory yet, but it is familiarity. And familiarity is a powerful thing. The room feels different now. Not fuller. Just more alive. You sense that the library is beginning to recognize itself. Not consciously. not deliberately, but through the accumulation of echoes. Each repeated whisper leaves a faint impression, like breath fogging a mirror that slowly learns your shape. There is gentle humor here too. The universe repeats itself without knowing why, like someone checking the same empty fridge, just in case something new has appeared. It never works, and yet it keeps trying. You let out a quiet, relaxed breath. No one is watching. The whispers do not compete. They coexist. Multiple patterns form and dissolve at once, overlapping like soft conversations at a distance. None dominates. None leads. This is not selection yet. It is exploration. Time continues to stretch wide and unpressured. There are no deadlines in this library. No closing hours. Only the slow accumulation of familiar motions. You feel comforted by this. Repetition without demand. Change without fear. Some whispers last longer than others. Not because they are stronger, but because the environment happens to suit them. A little warmth here. A little stability there. Enough to let a pattern echo one more time. These longer-lasting whispers matter. They are not louder. They are simply more likely to return. And with each return, the library grows slightly more prepared to hold them. You notice how the shelves seem closer now. Still empty, still unmarked, but no longer distant. They feel like they are waiting for something specific, even if they do not know what that is yet. You breathe in slowly. You imagine the whispers settling. This chapter of the story is about patience. About how memory does not arrive fully formed. It tiptoes in, disguised as habit. It practices being remembered before it ever becomes permanent. The whispers continue. Soft. Persistent. Gentle. As you exhale, the echoes stretch just a little longer across the library halls, and somewhere within that lingering sound, the idea of shelter begins to form, quietly preparing the space for walls, for boundaries, for the first shelves that will soon rise to hold these fragile stories in place. You are still here. The warmth has not faded. The low hum continues, steady and familiar, like a breath you no longer need to think about. The whispers from before have not vanished either. They drift through the air, repeating softly, but now they seem to circle instead of scatter. You take a slow breath in. The air feels slightly closer. You breathe out. Nothing presses you. Something subtle is changing. The patterns you listened to earlier begin to gather, not out of intention, but out of convenience. Certain molecules linger near one another, meeting again and again, until drifting apart feels less likely than staying close. It is not a decision. It is a comfort. You sense the beginning of an inside. At first, it is barely noticeable. A faint outline. A suggestion that space can curve inward instead of remaining endlessly open. Molecules arrange themselves into loose boundaries, like arms gently folding, not to trap, but to hold. The first shelves are being imagined. They do not appear all at once. There is no construction sound, no dramatic moment. Instead, soft edges form where movement slows. A membrane begins as a habit, just another repeated pattern, but this one traces a loop. You breathe in slowly. The loop holds. You breathe out. It holds again. This is important. This is shelter. Inside these gentle boundaries, the whispers sound different. They echo less wildly. They last longer. Patterns that once dissolved too quickly now have time to repeat before fading. The library has found a way to pause the drift. You feel the comfort of enclosure. Not tight. Not closed. Just safe. The shelves are no longer only potential. They begin to exist as surfaces where loose pages can rest without slipping away. Information, still fragile, now has a place to linger. This is the birth of the cell. Though no one calls it that yet. You notice how calm the process feels. Boundaries do not arrive as walls slammed into place. They grow like skin, flexible and forgiving. They bend, they ripple, they adjust. They allow things in. They let things out. They are not prisons. They are invitations to stay. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the warm ground beneath your feet. The space feels more intimate now, like stepping from a wide hall into a quiet reading room. Inside the boundary, chemistry slows just enough to notice itself. Patterns repeat with greater reliability. Whispers become phrases, still soft, still imperfect, but more recognizable. Outside, the drift continues. Inside, something rests. You breathe out gently. You sense the relief. The library is learning how to protect its stories. Not permanently. Not completely. Just enough to give memory a chance. The shelves do not demand perfection. They only offer time. There is a small kindness in this moment. Life, in its earliest form, does not begin by fighting the world. It begins by creating a pocket of calm within it. You might find this familiar. A room. A blanket. A quiet corner. Inside these early enclosures, chemical stories can be told more than once before they fade. The same sequence repeats, slightly altered, slightly reshaped, but recognizable. Familiarity deepens. You inhale slowly. The boundary holds. You exhale. It flexes, but remains. The shelves now have something to do. They keep the loose pages from drifting away. They allow accumulation, even if only briefly. And accumulation changes everything. Without shelter, memory is fleeting. With shelter, memory begins. You notice that not all boundaries last. Some dissolve quickly, their edges too fragile to maintain. Others persist longer, their loops closing more reliably. Again, there is no judgment here. Only variation. The library observes quietly. Time watches patiently. Those enclosures that last longer allow more repetition inside them. And repetition, as you have learned, is the softest form of remembering. The shelves are doing their work simply by existing. You feel a sense of being held. Not constrained. Supported. There is gentle humor here, too. The universe invents rooms without knowing what rooms are for. It builds shelves before there are books, walls before there are stories. It prepares without expectation. You let your shoulders drop. You trust the process. Inside these early cells, the whispers grow more confident. They do not become louder, but they become steadier. Some patterns now repeat so often that they shape the space around them, encouraging the boundary to persist. Memory and shelter begin to cooperate. The library feels different now. Not grander, not fuller, just more focused. The shelves, once empty and distant, are now close enough to touch. You imagine running your fingers along them, smooth and warm, flexible like living skin. You take another slow breath. The room breathes with you. This is not life as you know it. There are no thoughts, no feelings, no awareness. But there is continuity. There is inside and outside. There is the first suggestion that something can belong somewhere. Belonging matters. Even here. The shelves allow chemical stories to line up, not neatly, not perfectly, but together. Pages rest against pages. Patterns influence patterns. Information begins to interact with itself. You sense the quiet power of this shift. The library is no longer only listening. It is holding. Time passes gently. Long enough for variation to matter. Long enough for some stories to become familiar residents of their enclosures. Long enough for memory to feel less like an accident. You breathe out slowly. The enclosure remains. This chapter of the story is about protection without rigidity. About how life does not begin by armoring itself, but by softening just enough to create calm within motion. The shelves do not lock. They cradle. And within that cradle, something new is preparing itself. Something that will not only repeat, but carry its own instructions for repeating. Notes that can travel. Notes that can be copied. As the shelves stabilize, as the pages rest more easily within them, you sense that the library is ready for writing, not just echoing. You inhale gently. You feel the space grow attentive. The first living notes are almost here, waiting just beyond the edge of this quiet room, ready to begin writing themselves in the margins of time. You are still inside the library. The shelves stand gently now, no longer imaginary, no longer empty of purpose. They do not creak. They do not demand order. They simply exist, holding space with quiet patience. The warmth remains, steady and calm, and the low hum continues, like a distant tide moving through stone. You take a slow breath in. The air feels settled. You breathe out. The room listens. Inside these early shelters, the whispers have changed. They no longer only echo. Some of them move. They travel from one place to another, carrying their shape with them, like notes folded and passed hand to hand in a quiet room. You are about to meet RNA. It does not arrive with ceremony. It slips into existence the way ideas often do, unnoticed at first. A strand forms, light and flexible, more suggestion than structure. It does not stay still. It does not pretend to last forever. It exists to move. You sense its presence as motion with memory. RNA is the first thing here that can both hold a pattern and help that pattern happen again. It is not a book. It is not even a page. It is more like a penciled note written in the margin, easy to copy, easy to smudge, easy to lose. And that is its strength. You breathe in slowly. Copy. You breathe out. Copy again. RNA drifts through the sheltered space, touching other molecules, encouraging familiar shapes to form. It does not command. It suggests. It nudges chemistry toward patterns it already knows. The library feels busier now, though still calm. Movement has direction, even if no one has given it instructions. Messages appear, disappear, then reappear nearby, slightly altered, like handwriting that never looks exactly the same twice. You notice the softness of it all. Nothing is rigid. Nothing insists on precision. RNA can carry information, but it does not hoard it. It passes it along, copying itself when conditions allow, then letting go. Some copies last. Others fall apart quickly. No one keeps score. This is memory without permanence. And that is enough for now. You might find this comforting. The first system of biological information is not obsessed with accuracy. It allows mistakes. It welcomes variation. It treats imperfection as part of the process, not something to be corrected. There is gentle humor here. The universe begins its record-keeping with a tool that is famously messy. Life's first notes are written in pencil, without erasers, in the dim light of an unfinished room. You smile softly. It feels right. RNA does more than one job, and it does them all imperfectly. Sometimes it stores information. Sometimes it helps reactions happen. Sometimes it copies itself, then drifts away. It multitasks without realizing that multitasking will one day become inconvenient. For now, it works beautifully. You walk slowly along the shelves, imagining strands of RNA resting briefly against them, then lifting away again. They never stay long. They are not meant to. They are messages in motion, not archives. You inhale gently. Copy. Pause. You exhale. Copy again. Each copying event is slightly different. A small change here. A subtle shift there. Most changes mean nothing. A few change how long the note lasts, or how easily it copies. These differences do not matter yet, but they are being collected quietly by time. The library does not judge them. It simply notices what returns. RNA thrives in this sheltered space because it can exist just long enough. The shelves protect it from immediate loss, but not forever. This balance matters. Too fragile, and nothing repeats. Too stable, and nothing changes. Here, change and continuity hold hands. You feel the rhythm settle into your breathing. Slow. Steady. Forgiving. This chapter of the story is about learning to write without worrying about preservation. Life practices communication before it commits to memory. It experiments with messages that can move, interact, and fade. The library fills with faint pencil marks. Notes in margins. Temporary reminders. Instructions written softly, then overwritten. It is not tidy. It is alive. You sense how this mobility changes everything. Information is no longer trapped where it forms. It can travel within the sheltered space, influencing distant reactions, connecting patterns that would otherwise remain separate. Connection begins here. quietly. There is no central script, no master copy. Each strand is both original and derivative, both source and echo. Information flows like breath, not like stone. You breathe in. You imagine a strand copying itself nearby. You breathe out. It drifts away. Some RNA strands last longer than others. Some copy more easily. Some fall apart quickly. Again, this is not competition. It is exploration. Time is patient enough to let patterns reveal themselves. The shelves feel busier now, though still gentle. Loose pages rest briefly, then lift. Margins fill, then clear. The library hum deepens, enriched by motion. You feel reassured by the impermanence. Nothing here is burdened by the need to last forever. And yet, a quiet tension begins to form. Pencil marks fade. Notes get lost. Messages drift away before they can be copied again. Memory, while possible, is still fragile. You sense this limitation without urgency. Just awareness. RNA is wonderful, but it is tired. It does too much. It carries information, performs tasks, copies itself, all while remaining delicate. Eventually, this becomes inefficient, though no one calls it that yet. The library is learning. Slowly. You let your breath deepen slightly. The warmth remains constant. This is the moment before specialization. Before the idea that storage and action might be better handled separately. RNA does not know it is temporary, but the conditions for something more stable are quietly assembling. You notice how some notes are copied more carefully, protected more often. How certain patterns seem to ask for permanence, not out of desire, but out of usefulness. The pencil marks linger longer than before, but they still fade. You inhale slowly. You feel the space preparing. This chapter closes without an ending. The notes continue to copy, to wander, to smudge and shift. They are doing exactly what they need to do. Teaching the library what kind of memory it wants. As you breathe out, calmly and fully, you sense the shelves waiting for something heavier, something bound, something that will stay where pencil cannot. The pencil still moves. But somewhere nearby, a book is beginning to imagine itself. You feel the change before you see it. The library does not announce anything new, yet the air grows slightly quieter, as if it knows it is about to hold something important. The warmth remains, the hum continues, but the motion slows just enough to be noticed. You breathe in slowly. The breath feels deeper. You breathe out. The room listens again. The penciled notes still move through the shelves. RNA continues its gentle wandering, copying, drifting, fading, doing its best. But now there is a pause between copies, a hesitation that was not there before. As if the library has begun to wonder whether some of these notes deserve a more permanent home. And then it appears. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. A structure forms that feels different from the rest. Heavier. Calmer. More deliberate. Where RNA bends and flexes, this new form settles. It does not rush to move. It does not multitask. It simply exists, holding itself together with quiet confidence. You are meeting DNA. It feels like a book arriving in a room full of loose pages. A bound volume placed gently on a shelf that has been waiting for exactly this wait. The shelf does not strain. It welcomes. You inhale slowly. You sense the stability. You exhale. It remains. DNA is not here to act. It is here to remember. It does not hurry to participate in reactions or wander through the space. It stays close to the shelves, content to be stored, content to last. This is not a replacement. It is a refinement. RNA still moves. It still copies. It still carries messages. But now it is no longer responsible for keeping the master story safe. That responsibility has been placed carefully into the binding of this new book. You imagine running your fingers along the spine. It feels cool, smooth, reassuring. Not rigid, but firm enough to protect what lies inside. The pages are not meant to be handled constantly. They are meant to endure. The library exhales softly. It has been holding its breath. DNA holds information in a way that feels calm rather than frantic. It does not rush to copy itself at every opportunity. It waits for the right moment, trusting that there will be time. This trust changes everything. You feel it in your own body, that subtle relaxation that comes when you no longer have to remember everything at once. When you can place something important somewhere safe and know it will still be there later. You breathe in gently. You let go of effort. You breathe out. The shelves support the weight. This is where storage and action separate. DNA becomes the archive, the quiet reference section of the library. RNA becomes the messenger, the note passed from shelf to workspace. Each does what it does best, without confusion. The system grows calmer because of this division. DNA's structure protects it. Its form is stable, less likely to fade or smudge. Errors still happen, but less often. And when they do, they are not catastrophic. The book remains readable. You sense how important this is. Life does not need perfect memory. It needs reliable memory. Something that can be trusted across time. The library now has that trust. There is gentle humor here, too. After all this drifting and whispering and experimenting, the universe decides that maybe it should write things down properly. It invents a filing system, not out of orderliness, but out of exhaustion. You smile faintly. It makes sense. DNA does not shout its contents. It keeps them folded inward, protected, waiting. When information is needed, a copy is made, sent outward as RNA, while the original remains untouched. You inhale slowly. Copy outward. You exhale. Original remains. This is elegance. Quiet elegance. The shelves feel fuller now, though still spacious. The library has weight to it, a sense of continuity that was missing before. The hum deepens, enriched by the presence of something that can last through many repetitions of time. You notice how the room feels safer. Not because danger has vanished, but because memory is no longer so fragile. The story of the cell can now survive interruptions. DNA does not need to be read constantly. Much of it rests in silence, its pages closed, content to exist. This silence is not wasted, It is protective. It allows the information to remain intact until it is truly needed. You let your shoulders drop. Nothing is demanded of you here. This chapter of the story is about commitment. About deciding, gently, that some things are worth preserving more carefully. Life does not rush into this decision. It arrives at it slowly, through trial, through fading notes, through lost messages. When DNA finally appears, it feels inevitable. You imagine the shelves adjusting slightly to accommodate the book. Not bending, not straining. Just making room. The library was always meant to hold something like this. RNA continues its work, lighter now, freed from the burden of permanence. It copies passages when needed, carries them to quieter rooms where actions happen, then dissolves without regret. Action and memory cooperate without conflict. You breathe in. The book stays closed. You breathe out. The message travels. The genetic code begins to settle into place, not as a rigid script, but as a reliable reference. It does not dictate every moment. It offers guidance, potential, possibility. The library is no longer improvising entirely. It has themes now. Motifs that return across time. Variations on a stable text. You feel the calm of this structure. The reassurance that comes when something important is not constantly at risk of being lost. DNA allows life to slow down, to grow more complex without losing itself. The shelves feel warm beneath your imagined touch. The book feels cool and steady. Errors still happen. Copies still vary. Change has not stopped. But now change happens against a background of continuity. Footnotes appear without erasing the main text. This balance is everything. You notice how the room breathes more evenly now. The hum is steadier, less scattered. The library feels like it knows what it is for. You breathe in slowly. You trust the shelves. You breathe out. The book remains. DNA does not act alone. It does not control. It simply exists, offering its contents when asked. Life reads from it as needed, never all at once, never carelessly. Not every page is opened. Not every chapter is used. This restraint is kindness. As time passes, more books join the shelves. Variations on the same volume, copied carefully, stored reliably, each carrying a slightly different story. The library grows, not in noise, but in depth. You feel a sense of belonging here. Memory has a home. This chapter closes with quiet confidence. The bound book rests on its shelf, safe, patient, enduring. It does not need to announce itself. Its presence is enough. As you breathe out, long and gentle, you sense the next movement beginning. The book will not remain closed forever. When the time comes, it will be read, softly and selectively, its pages copied into motion once more. Now that the book exists, the library is ready to learn how to read. You remain inside the library, and the calm has deepened. The bound books rest on their shelves, unmoving, patient, their weight reassuring rather than heavy. Nothing vibrates with urgency. Nothing calls out to be handled. The room has learned restraint, and it wears that lesson gently. You breathe in slowly. The air feels organized now. You breathe out. Nothing is lost. The books do not open themselves. They wait. DNA does not act directly. It does not step down from the shelves or involve itself in the daily motion of the room. Instead, it allows itself to be referenced. Quietly. Selectively. Only when needed. This is where reading begins. But reading here is not dramatic. There is no sudden unfolding of pages, no flood of information spilling into the air. Instead, a careful copy is made. A passage is traced, not removed, and carried elsewhere. You watch as RNA returns, lighter and quicker than the bound books, ready to move again. It approaches the shelf with familiarity, like a trusted assistant who knows not to disturb the original. You inhale gently. A passage is copied. You exhale. The book remains closed. This process is called transcription, though the library never speaks the word. It feels more like whispering a sentence to yourself so you do not forget it as you walk away. The information stays safe while the message travels. Nothing is taken. Nothing is damaged. The shelves seem to approve. RNA carries the copied message away, moving through the library toward quieter rooms where action happens. These rooms are warm and focused, filled with tools that know how to respond to instructions. Here, reading becomes doing. But even now, nothing feels mechanical. The process is ritualistic, almost ceremonial. Messages arrive, are interpreted gently, and then dissolve when their purpose is complete. You feel the rhythm settle into your body. Inhale as messages are copied. Exhale as they are carried away. This is translation. Not every message becomes action. Not every copied line is used immediately. Some wait. Some fade. Some are never translated at all. This is not waste. It is choice without awareness, selection without intention. The library has learned moderation. You walk slowly between the shelves, noticing how many books remain untouched. Their pages stay closed, not because they are unimportant, but because now is not the moment. Timing matters more than total knowledge. This feels comforting. You do not need to use everything you are. Gene expression, as it would later be called, is not a constant stream. It is a gentle conversation between storage and need. The cell listens to its surroundings, then decides which passages to copy, which to leave resting. The book does not argue. It trusts the process. There is quiet humor here. After building such a careful archive, life learns that it should not read the whole thing at once. Even the universe knows that information overload is exhausting. You smile faintly. The library smiles with you. Messages move outward, translated into structures that help the cell exist. These structures do not last forever. They do their work, then fade back into components, ready to be reused. Nothing here clings unnecessarily. You breathe out slowly. The room remains steady. This chapter of the story is about flow rather than control. DNA does not command the cell. It offers possibilities. RNA does not enforce outcomes. It carries suggestions. Action arises from cooperation. You sense how different this feels from a machine. There are no switches slammed into place, no rigid sequences ticking forward. There is responsiveness, adaptation, listening. Some pages are read often, others rarely, some never. Silence is as meaningful as expression. You pause, letting that idea settle. Silence is allowed. The shelves feel taller now, not because they have grown, but because you understand them better. They are not instructions shouting into the room. They are resources waiting patiently. You inhale. A message is chosen. You exhale. Another remains untouched. Not every page is read at once. This restraint protects the system. It allows complexity without chaos. The cell can change its behavior without rewriting its core memory. It can respond to warmth, scarcity, or abundance simply by adjusting which passages it copies. You feel the elegance of this design. It is quiet intelligence. The reading process itself is gentle. Copies are made carefully, but not obsessively. Small errors happen, but they are usually inconsequential. The original text remains safe on the shelf, unchanged. You sense the calm confidence this creates. Mistakes are not fatal when memory is protected. The library hums softly, a steady background presence that tells you everything is continuing as it should. Messages come and go. Actions arise and dissolve. The shelves remain. You take another slow breath. Inhale as information flows. Exhale as it settles. This chapter connects deeply to the last. The bound book now has purpose beyond storage. It has become a quiet source, feeding the living motion of the room without being consumed by it. Reading, here, is not about extracting everything. It is about choosing gently. You imagine the books resting overnight, pages closed, content. They are not anxious about being used. They know there will be time. Time is generous in this library. You feel that generosity in your own breathing. Nothing presses forward. Nothing pulls back. The story continues without rush. As this chapter draws to a close, the reading continues quietly. Messages are copied, carried, translated, and released. The shelves stand calm and unchanged, their contents intact. You sense another idea waiting nearby. Something about the spaces between pages. The quiet stretches that shape meaning without speaking. As you breathe out, long and unhurried, you feel your attention drifting toward those silent margins, where not reading becomes just as important as reading, and the next chapter begins to gather its stillness. You do not move far to arrive here. The library feels the same at first. The shelves are steady, the books remain closed, the low hum continues like a familiar breath in another room. And yet, something subtle shifts as your attention drifts away from the words themselves and settles into the spaces around them. You breathe in slowly. You notice the quiet. You breathe out. The quiet notices you. Between the pages, there is space. Between the passages that are copied and carried, there are long stretches where nothing happens at all. This is not absence. It is design, though no one designs it on purpose. Most of the book is silent. DNA rests on its shelves, vast and patient. Only a small portion of its pages are ever copied at any one moment. The rest remain closed, untouched, unspoken. Not forgotten. Simply waiting. You let that idea soften inside you. Waiting does not mean unused. The library understands this instinctively. Silence here is not neglect. It is protection. It keeps the story flexible. It prevents everything from happening all at once. You walk slowly along the shelves, feeling the rhythm of closed spines beneath your awareness. So many pages, so few read. And yet, the room functions beautifully. This is regulation. But it feels nothing like control. In the quiet margins, timing is decided. Context matters. A page that sleeps now may be copied later. A passage that mattered once may never be used again. Silence gives the system room to respond rather than react. You breathe in gently. The pause holds. You breathe out. It continues to hold. There was a time when scientists called these silent regions meaningless. Junk. Leftovers. Mistakes. The library never believed that. It knew better, in its own quiet way. Margins shape stories. Pauses shape music. Silence shapes meaning. The spaces between the lines help decide when a message is copied, how often, and for how long. They soften the process, allowing information to be expressed only when it fits the moment. You feel comforted by this restraint. Nothing is forced to speak. The quiet parts of the book listen to the environment. Warmth. Scarcity. Abundance. Signals drift through the library like changes in light, and the silent regions respond by allowing or discouraging reading elsewhere. This is subtle work. Almost invisible. Deeply important. You inhale slowly. You sense the patience of it all. The library does not panic when nothing happens. It understands that stillness is part of motion. That rest is a form of activity when the goal is continuity. Some pages will never be read in this lifetime of the cell. Others will be read only once. This does not make them useless. It makes them available. Availability is different from demand. You notice how calming this feels. The book is not shouting instructions. It is offering possibilities, trusting the moment to choose. There is gentle humor here too. After all this careful writing, the universe decides that the most important parts might be the parts that do nothing at all. It invents meaning by leaving space for it. You smile softly. The shelves remain quiet. Silence also protects against error. By not reading everything, the system reduces noise. It limits confusion. It keeps action focused rather than scattered. You breathe out slowly. The focus remains. This chapter of the story invites rest. Not just for the cell, but for you. It reminds you that you do not need to express every thought, use every skill, or open every page to be complete. Stillness has purpose. Silence is not emptiness. The library grows wiser in its quiet. It learns that regulation does not require force. It requires listening. The margins are where that listening happens. You feel the quiet spread gently through the room. The hum softens, not fading, just becoming more spacious. Time stretches again, unpressured. You inhale. You allow the pause. You exhale. The pause allows you. In these silent regions, change is prepared slowly. Tiny adjustments accumulate without announcement. When the time comes for a new passage to be read, the space around it is already ready. Nothing arrives abruptly. Everything is eased in. You sense how silence and expression cooperate, not compete. One shapes the other. One makes the other meaningful. The library breathes evenly. The shelves stand calm. As this chapter settles, you begin to notice something else forming quietly beneath the stillness. Even silence is not perfectly preserved. Over long stretches of time, tiny changes slip into the margins. Small variations. Gentle edits. Footnotes written without intention. As you breathe out, slow and relaxed, you feel the quiet preparing to shift, ever so slightly, making room for the soft imperfections that will one day become annotations, revisions, and the next slow turn in the story. You are still inside the library, and the silence from before has not disappeared. It has only changed texture. The shelves remain calm, the books remain closed, and the low hum continues like a steady breath moving through the walls. But now, within that stillness, something subtle is happening. You breathe in slowly. The quiet holds. You breathe out. The quiet shifts. In the margins of the pages, where nothing was meant to happen, tiny changes begin to appear. They do not announce themselves. They do not interrupt the calm. They arrive the way dust settles on a surface you thought was untouched. These are errors. But they do not feel like mistakes. When DNA is copied, the process is careful, but it is never perfect. A letter changes. A small piece slips. Most of the time, nothing noticeable happens at all. The copy still works. The story still makes sense. You let that idea rest inside you. Imperfect does not mean broken. The library does not react with alarm. It has no red ink. No erasers scraping harshly across the page. It simply keeps the book on the shelf and allows time to decide whether the change matters. Most do not. You walk slowly along the shelves, sensing these tiny differences scattered through the volumes. They are quiet footnotes, barely visible, written so softly that only time can read them. This is mutation. But it feels like editing. Some changes fade quickly, overridden by future copies. Others remain, not because they are better, but because they do no harm. They sit politely in the margins, neither helping nor hindering, simply existing. You breathe in gently. The margin holds. You breathe out. It holds again. Every so often, a change alters how a message is read. A passage becomes slightly easier to copy. Or slightly harder. A structure lasts a little longer, or dissolves a little sooner. These shifts are small, almost unnoticeable in the moment. But time notices everything. The library does not rush to interpret these differences. It lets them accumulate quietly, allowing patterns to reveal themselves slowly, like meaning emerging from repeated readings. There is comfort in this patience. Nothing is judged immediately. You feel the rhythm of it all settle into your body. Copy. Pause. Copy again. Each repetition carries the possibility of change, and each change is met with calm. The universe is not afraid of errors. It expects them. There is gentle humor here too. Life writes footnotes before it understands the main text. It edits chapters that have not yet been fully read. It revises without a final draft in mind. You smile softly. The library seems amused. Evolution, at this stage, is not competition. It is conversation. A slow back and forth between what persists and what fades. The shelves do not choose favorites. They simply keep what continues to work. You inhale slowly. Time stretches wide. You exhale. Time continues. Some footnotes change nothing. Some change everything. But there is no way to tell which is which when they first appear. Significance only emerges in hindsight, long after the ink has dried. This makes the library humble. It does not pretend to know the ending. Errors do not accumulate in isolation. They interact with one another, layering gently, influencing how pages are read together. A small change here alters the effect of another change there. Meaning becomes contextual, not absolute. You notice how this mirrors the quiet complexity of your own thoughts. One small shift can change how everything else feels, even if you cannot point to the moment it happened. You breathe out slowly. The comparison settles. The library grows richer through these annotations. Not noisier. Not messier. Just deeper. The story gains texture, nuance, possibility. Without errors, there would be no variation. Without variation, there would be no learning. The shelves seem to lean into this truth. They are not pristine. They are lived in. Books bear subtle signs of their history, gentle word that speaks of use rather than damage. You walk on, feeling the warmth of the room remain constant. The hum does not change pace. There is no urgency introduced by imperfection. This chapter of the story reframes mistakes as collaborators. Not enemies. Not problems to be eliminated. They are quiet participants in a process that unfolds too slowly for fear. You inhale. You allow softness. You exhale. You allow time. Some footnotes eventually reshape entire chapters. Over many repetitions, a small change becomes common, then expected, then essential. What began as an error becomes part of the main text. The library never marks the moment this happens. There is no line drawn between mistake and feature. The transition is gradual, unremarkable, and deeply effective. You feel reassured by this. Nothing has to be perfect to belong. Errors also remind the system that nothing is fixed forever. Even the bound books are open to gentle revision, as long as those revisions can survive the quiet test of time. Time is the editor here. Patient. Unbiased. Unemotional. You sense the calm authority of it. As you stand among the shelves, you realize that the library is no longer just storing information. It is learning from itself. Each copy, each variation, each footnote feeds back into the whole. Memory becomes adaptive. You breathe in slowly. You sense resilience forming. You breathe out. It settles in. The story of life grows not through sudden leaps, but through accumulated whispers of change. Each one small enough to be safe. Each one gentle enough to be tolerated. This is how complexity grows without chaos. You notice how little drama is involved. No alarms. No crises. Just steady continuation. The library trusts that what needs to last will find a way to do so. And sometimes, what lasts is the unexpected. As this chapter begins to close, you feel the weight of accumulated footnotes resting comfortably on the shelves. They do not overwhelm the books. They enrich them. The hum deepens slightly, like a breath taken in contentment. You breathe out, long and relaxed, and as you do, you sense the library preparing for its next quiet expansion. These edited stories will soon need more space, more rooms, places where different versions can coexist side by side. The shelves remain steady. And somewhere beyond them, new rooms are already beginning to imagine themselves. You remain inside the library, and it feels larger now, though you have not moved. The shelves are no longer confined to a single space. Their calm hum stretches in all directions, and you notice gaps opening, spaces forming naturally between them. The library is expanding, but softly, without rush. Each breath of yours seems to travel farther than before. You breathe in slowly. The air feels more spacious. You breathe out. The hum stretches with you. New rooms emerge like quiet suggestions. They do not appear suddenly or abruptly. Instead, corners fold, hallways drift into being, and the existing shelves adjust gently to accommodate more space. Each room is warm, inviting, and distinct, yet they all share the same underlying architecture. The library is learning organization without force. Some rooms take on different functions. One holds the older bound books, the DNA volumes, safely on shelves where their contents are rarely disturbed. Another room allows the RNA notes to travel freely, carrying their messages to places of action. Yet another room contains copies in progress, fragile and moving, whispering to each other. You inhale slowly. The rooms hum in gentle rhythm. You exhale. They respond quietly. Each room develops its own subtle identity. The air feels slightly different in each, the light filters differently across the shelves, and the low hum varies, softer here, warmer there. You can sense that the library is experimenting with division not through urgency or design, but through the natural flow of activity. Specialization begins in silence. Some shelves remain constant, others shift subtly to accommodate passing strands of RNA. Certain books seem to prefer particular rooms, even though they carry the same information. The library is not instructing them. It simply allows patterns to emerge. You walk slowly through a hallway that did not exist before. The warmth is steady beneath your feet, the hum gentle in your ears. Every room is familiar yet slightly different, as though the library is showing you the same story from multiple perspectives. Coordination emerges naturally. The books remain identical at their cores, yet their contexts differ. One copy of a gene might be read often in one room, rarely in another. The message remains the same, but its interpretation varies gently according to the environment. You feel the calm intelligence of this arrangement. Flexibility without chaos. Variety without disorder. You breathe in. You sense multiple spaces. You breathe out. They move in harmony. This chapter of the story is about quiet growth. Expansion does not mean noise. Division does not mean conflict. The library learns to hold more without becoming overwhelmed. Each room becomes a microcosm of stability, yet all remain connected. Some rooms echo faintly with each other, as whispers pass from one to the next. These echoes are not interruptions, they are coordination. A conversation without words. A dance without choreography. You imagine the shelves shifting slightly, accommodating every new arrival while maintaining order. The library seems conscious of itself, but not controlling. It is patient, observant, and adaptable. You inhale slowly. The echoes remind you of continuity. You exhale. The continuity flows. The library now allows for specialization. Cells in the future will reflect this arrangement. Some will perform specific functions. Some will carry messages. Some will store information safely. Yet all will share the same core text, the same foundation of DNA. You notice how this mirrors your own experience. Even in quiet moments, division of labor allows complexity to exist. Not by urgency or demand, but by trust in the system's flow. The rooms remain warm. The hum continues gently. The books rest on their shelves, waiting patiently. Errors, footnotes, and variations still exist, but they are now distributed across multiple spaces. One room may hold a slightly altered copy, another may preserve the original. The library is no longer a single hall, it is a network of possibilities. You breathe in. You feel the network expand within you. You breathe out. It settles into place. You walk along a corridor where multiple rooms converge. The warmth remains underfoot. The hum rises and falls as the activity shifts from one room to another. RNA continues its gentle journey, now carrying messages across rooms rather than just along a single hall. Coordination is seamless. No urgency. No noise. Just rhythm. This is the quiet emergence of multicellularity. Individual spaces specialize. Messages travel between them. Patterns repeat in multiple contexts. Cooperation arises without instructions. The library organizes itself through gentle feedback, through rhythm, through time. You notice the elegance of this simplicity. Division, not separation. Specialization, not isolation. Each room seems to understand its own purpose, even though no one told it what to do. Some books rest undisturbed for long stretches. Others are copied often, their messages carried quickly through hallways. RNA adapts naturally, sensing which rooms need attention and which do not. You inhale slowly. The flow carries meaning. You exhale. The rhythm continues. Even the smallest spaces matter. A corner where only a few copies occur, a quiet hall where no messages travel, a single shelf holding a fragile footnote, all of these contribute to the stability of the whole library. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is ignored. You feel a quiet reassurance. The library grows, but not at the cost of calm. It expands, but without haste. Some rooms echo gently into others, creating patterns of resonance. These echoes are subtle, almost imperceptible, but they knit the library together. A message copied in one room may influence activity in another room, not immediately, not loudly, but gradually, over time. Coordination without command. You pause and notice the warmth under your feet, the hum in your ears, the gentle light on the shelves. Everything is familiar yet new. The library is no longer a single hall of drifting pages. It has become a complex, interwoven space of multiple rooms, each contributing to the whole. You inhale slowly. The interconnections feel alive. You exhale. The calm deepens. This chapter is about expansion with intention disguised as natural flow. Growth does not require urgency. Complexity arises from repeated whispers, gentle cooperation, and quiet adjustments. Life's first lessons in multicellularity are hidden in this calm. You sense how the library has learned to balance stability and flexibility. Each room has its own rhythm. Each shelf its own story. Each message its own journey. Together, they create a quiet symphony of order and possibility. You breathe in slowly. You feel the resonance of multiple spaces. You breathe out. The resonance settles into warmth. As this chapter draws to a close, you sense that some of the books are beginning to reflect on themselves. Copies of copies, annotations of annotations, subtle awareness forming quietly within the network of rooms. The library is no longer only storing and sending. It is beginning to observe. You exhale long and gentle, and as you do, you feel the soft beginnings of reflection. Some messages will not merely travel, they will start to consider their own existence. Some rooms will not just hold copies, they will watch the flow of information through themselves. The library grows in depth, quietly, deliberately. And in the stillness between rooms, a new form of awareness begins to stir. You walk slowly through the expanding rooms of the library. The warmth underfoot is steady, the low hum remains, and the shelves rise around you, familiar yet more complex. Every space carries echoes of the messages traveling through it, copies, annotations, and footnotes mingling softly. The library is no longer just a place for storing information. It is beginning to notice itself. You breathe in slowly. You sense the subtle awareness forming. You breathe out. The library continues, gentle and patient. Some books, once silent, now seem to pause as if listening. RNA carries its messages carefully, aware of the rhythms it follows, almost as though it senses the impact of its own motion. DNA rests on its shelves, still calm, still bound, but somehow more present, more observant in the quiet moments between copying. Consciousness is not loud. It does not demand attention. It arrives softly, like a whisper brushing your cheek. You notice how patterns begin to fold back on themselves. Some messages are copied, then interpreted in a room adjacent to where they originated. Some footnotes are read more than once, each reading reflecting on the last. It is subtle, imperceptible at first, but you can feel it in the warmth and the hum. The library is learning to be aware of its own activity. You inhale slowly. Observation flows inward. You exhale. It spreads outward. This awareness is not yet thought. It is not self-conscious reflection. It is simply the system noticing its own actions. RNA, DNA, the rooms, the footnotes all start to interact in ways that suggest a quiet recognition of patterns. Repetition is monitored. Variation is noted. The space is alive with soft comprehension. Even the silent margins seem aware. They stretch to accommodate change, not in reaction, but in gentle anticipation of what might be needed. Pauses are longer in some sections, shorter in others, as though the library itself is practicing patience, learning the rhythm of its own processes. You walk slowly, feeling the air move lightly around you. The hum becomes slightly richer. You breathe in. You feel the pattern. You breathe out. It settles into the library. The library does not rush. It does not insist. It observes quietly, allowing patterns to emerge without force. You notice the first hints of reflection. Messages carry annotations that reference their own copying. Some RNA strands seem to pause, as if considering the message they bear before delivering it. Some DNA sequences, once inert, now influence the behavior of neighboring sequences subtly, almost like silent guidance. There is gentle humor here. Life has spent millennia learning how to copy, to store, to move, and now it begins to notice that it can do so while observing itself. The library does not clap. It only hums. But the act itself is quietly remarkable. You inhale slowly. Awareness stretches through the rooms. You exhale. It is unhurried. This chapter of the story is about emergence without force. Consciousness is not sudden. It is not overwhelming. It is a soft reflection, a quiet awareness that life is more than just copying, more than just storing, more than just transmitting. It is a system beginning to observe its own existence. You feel the calm of this realization. Nothing demands change. Nothing pressures action. Some rooms begin to resonate with this awareness. Books pause longer in their copying. Footnotes linger in the margins, their influence subtly noticed by other notes. The library has begun to learn the gentle art of self-reflection. You breathe in. You sense the flow of recognition. You breathe out. It integrates seamlessly. Consciousness touches the shelves softly. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But enough that you can feel the difference. The rooms, the books, the messages, the footnotes, they are connected in a subtle awareness that was not present before. This awareness does not rush forward. It does not demand to be first or loudest. It is patient. It is quiet. It simply exists, folding gently into every process that is already underway. You notice how beautifully this continues the pattern established long ago. RNA still moves. DNA still rests. Footnotes still accumulate. Copies still travel. And yet, the system now observes itself performing these actions. It is aware of the rhythm it maintains, the sequence of events it orchestrates without thought. You inhale slowly. You notice the quiet intelligence forming. You exhale. It drifts further into the shelves. There is a sense of wonder here, but not fear. Consciousness is not chaos. It is a gentle awareness, a soft capability to notice and to respond, quietly, in alignment with everything that has already come before. The library does not rush toward enlightenment. It is already learning, softly, steadily, without impatience. You feel it in your own body, the gentle rhythm of attention, the warmth of calm, the steady hum that flows through the library and through you. This chapter closes without a dramatic end. There is no climax. There is no rush. Instead, the library breathes. The shelves settle. The books rest, aware. The messages move, conscious of themselves as they go. RNA continues to copy, DNA continues to store, and the margins remain patient. As you breathe out long and unhurried, you sense that the next chapter is already beginning. The library has reached a point where awareness is possible, where reflection can begin, where the system can recognize its own presence without losing calm. And somewhere, beyond the shelves you can see, beyond the rooms, the library is preparing to return to itself, to fold its quiet consciousness into the next, deepest stage of the story. The hum continues. The warmth remains. The library is awake, gently, and you follow its breath toward the next chapter. You pause at the threshold of the library's newest rooms, and a soft realization settles over you. The shelves, the books, the footnotes, the quiet margins, they are not separate from you. You inhale slowly and sense that your breath is part of the library's rhythm. Each exhale carries the calm movement of RNA and DNA, the gentle copying of messages, the quiet observation of consciousness. You breathe in. You feel the hum within yourself. You breathe out. It continues gently. The rooms that emerged for specialization, the margins that preserved silence, the footnotes that turned errors into subtle guidance, all of these patterns exist now in your own body, your own mind. Every heartbeat echoes the turning of a page. Every thought drifts like a footnote settling into place. You are both observer and participant. You notice your hands resting gently in your lap, your warmth pressing softly against the air. You are a living room within the library. The boundaries that once seemed so distinct, the shelves, the books, the messages, fold inward, revealing that life itself is an extension of this quiet system. DNA rests within you as it does on the shelves, stable and patient. RNA moves through your cells as it moves through the library, copying and carrying instructions with gentle diligence. Footnotes and annotations, the accumulated errors and subtle shifts, flow through you, shaping the way you respond, the way you grow, the way you notice. You inhale slowly. You feel the continuity of life. You exhale. It integrates softly. The library has been teaching you without words. Its lessons are found in rhythm, in repetition, in silence, in the small, patient adjustments that guide action without force. Every breath you take mirrors the copying of a passage, the quiet expansion of a room, the gentle corrections of footnotes. You are the library, breathing, remembering, noticing itself. The warmth under your skin mirrors the warmth of the rooms. The low hum in your ears mirrors the quiet vibration of shelves supporting bound volumes and drifting RNA. Your heartbeat is the turning of pages, steady and patient, a rhythm repeated across eons, folded into your own presence. You feel your body expand into this awareness. You are both the observer and the observed. You are both the book and the reader. Errors and footnotes that once seemed distant now feel like gentle companions. The variations, the small changes, The quiet nudges that allowed life to adapt, they pulse softly through you. You notice how resilient you are, how flexible, how capable of holding and releasing, storing and expressing, without anxiety or strain. You inhale slowly. You trust your own rhythm. You exhale. The trust flows through your veins. The library continues its work quietly. Some rooms remain silent, some pages are copied and translated, some messages linger in margins, observing themselves as they go. You carry this same system within you. You are a living archive, a conscious network of memory and flow. The same principles that guided the emergence of multicellularity and awareness guide your own breathing, your own thoughts, your own quiet presence. There is comfort in this. There is reassurance. There is warmth. You notice that nothing requires urgency. Nothing demands attention. The pages of your being do not need to be fully read tonight. The messages you carry, the annotations within you, the footnotes of subtle change, all of it can rest. You can let the shelves within yourself settle. You can close the books gently. You can rest. You breathe in. You sense the library expanding quietly within you. You breathe out. The expansion settles. This chapter, the final one in the journey, is about unity. The separation between storage and action, between observation and participation, between silence and expression, all of it folds into a single understanding: you are the library remembering itself. The DNA resting in your cells, the RNA carrying messages, the silent margins, the accumulated footnotes, they are not distant history. They are here, alive, flowing through you now. You feel the calm depth of that realization. Your warmth spreads. Your breath lengthens. Your heartbeat aligns with the soft, rhythmic turning of pages. You notice a gentle humor in this. After billions of years of drifting molecules, copying strands, silent margins, and emerging rooms, the library has arrived at this quiet perfection: you. The system has folded in on itself, and here you are, walking barefoot on the warm stone floors, holding the rhythm of life in your own body. You inhale slowly. You become the hum. You exhale. You become the warmth. Everything that once seemed vast and separate is now intimate. The shelves exist inside you. The books exist inside you. The copying, the translation, the reflection, they are not stories out there. They are stories you carry, stories you are. You are the memory of life, breathing and aware, without need for hurry or completion. The library is safe. The books are safe. You are safe. Errors are no longer troubling. Footnotes are no longer confusing. Silence is no longer empty. Every element of the system, from the tiniest RNA strand to the boundest volume of DNA, has its place, and all places exist within you. You can let the messages rest. You can let the pages close. You can let the quiet settle. You breathe in. You feel the calm completeness. You breathe out. It spreads through you. Even the hum of the library, now echoing within your own being, carries the gentle reassurance that nothing needs to be remembered tonight. The bound books, the drifting notes, the silent margins, they all continue their work, even as you rest. You are the archive, the observer, the participant. You are the library remembering itself. Your heartbeat is steady. Your breath is deep. Your warmth is constant. As you prepare to drift into sleep, the knowledge of this vast, patient system moves through you like a lullaby. You do not need to rush. You do not need to act. You do not need to read every page. The library, the genetic code, the whispers of molecules, the margins, the footnotes, they are all here, resting, waiting, remembering in gentle rhythm. You inhale slowly. You feel the entirety of life within you. You exhale. You release all effort. This is the final lesson. The library is alive, and it is you. You are the memory, the observer, and the continuation of all that has come before. You are the shelves, the books, the RNA whispers, the quiet margins, the patient footnotes. You are the library remembering itself. And now, as you close your eyes, the shelves settle, the hum softens, the messages drift gently, and you rest, fully, peacefully, entirely part of this living, breathing story. Nothing needs to be remembered tonight. The library is safe. You are safe. You can rest.